Committee meeting for Tuesday, November the 29th. Our first order of business is to call the roll.
Commissioner Oliver.
Present.
Commissioner Davidson.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Gooch.
Here. Present.
Commissioner McMurray.
Present.
Commissioner Boyd.
Here.
Chairman Dodd.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Second order of business, Vice Chair Wilson, if you could approve the minutes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have reviewed the minutes from our October meeting, and I find them to be in order. And without objection, I move for their approval.
Do we have a second? And we have a second. All those in favor, or anyone have discussion? All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thanks again. We will move straight into the Health Department report. Mr. Crumby.
Hello. Good evening to Mayor Carr, Chairman Dodd, and our commissioners. Your health department continues to do good work for the people of Rutherford County, and we are proud to serve. I have just learned that you don't have the October report in front of you. We will get that to you first thing tomorrow. And keeping with our mission statement, the Tennessee Department of Health is to protect, promote, and improve the health and prosperity of the people of Tennessee. And we feel like the best way to reinforce that mission is to integrate it into everything we do. So some updates on protection. Our COVID-19 updates, hospitalizations are still trending downward. Positive cases are as well. The CDC has kept our community level rating as low. There at the health department, we do have a free rapid testing every day from 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. Vaccines are available from 8 to 10 or 1 to 3 walk-in hours. Boosters as well, and we do have the new bivalent COVID vaccine that addresses the two most prevalent variants. And that is, we have it's available 5 years or older, as long as it's been at least 2 months since your last dose or your primary series was completed. And we offer those again daily from 8 to 10 in the morning or from 1 to 3 in the afternoon. On the monkeypox front, intervention efforts do appear to be working, and reported cases still trending downward. Recently, the World Health Organization has requested that name be changed to Mpox to avoid perpetuating stigma. So if you will bear with me, I will try to refer to it as such. Mpox testing is available to people experiencing unexplained rashes. We just ask that they call us. They will talk to our disease intervention specialist, and then they will treat them accordingly. We do have vaccines available for Mpox, and that is a smallpox vaccine that seems to be applicable for Mpox. There's also treatment and therapeutics, the TPOXX treatment. The CDC did approve that to be used for Mpox as an investigational drug therapy. All that available at our Rutherford County Health Department. On the flu shot front, we did our Fight Flu event on November 9th, and it was a solid success. Statewide health departments administered 5,116 flu vaccines that day. Our Mid-Cumberland region that we belong to administered 588 of those. And from that day forth, flu shots are free and available during our walk-in hours there at the health department from 8 to 10, 1 to 3, Monday through Friday, available to anyone 6 months of age or older. Another order of business here that we did want to address was the amendment to the contract. In June of 2022, the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners approved the county's consolidated budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. This budget included a salary table lift for all county employees, which included the health department. Health departments run off a combination of federal dollars, about 33%, state dollars, about 33%, and generated revenue from the health departments, which are about 32%, and then county dollars usually make up that difference. Those are round numbers, given that all counties are a little different and their needs are different. Of those state funds, a large portion is paid through a yearly contract between Rutherford County government and the state of Tennessee. And this contract allows the state to reimburse the county government for expenses such as salaries. So what we're looking at is an amendment to a contract between Rutherford County government and the state of Tennessee that ends June 30th, 2023. This amendment allows the state to reimburse the county for the salary table lift that the county commission voted in previously this year. So the only thing that should be changing in this amendment is the extra money that was needed for the salary table lift.
Thank you. And so the grand total of $3,265,000 is your entire budget, and you're adding $1 million to it, or no, never mind. I'm reading state and federal numbers. Correct. Total contract amount $3.2 million. And guys, so the health department budget is a pass-through, except for that percentage that Mr. Crombie just mentioned, and it's always, as I recall, in arrears. We may have to fund some of these items, and the state funds come through. And so this is just an increase to cover the salaries that were approved in June. And so now the health department can recognize those funds, and when we submit payroll, the state will pay those funds. That's very rudimentary, but it's a pass-through. No money from us on this budget amendment. Is that correct? So two items here that Mr. Crombie's report was just an update. I don't think we have to do a motion on that, so we'll dispense with that. But is there any discussion or questions or emotion on the budget amendment for the health department?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you explain that again?
Yeah, and Mr. Crombie, if you'll help me.
Certainly. This refers to the contract between the Rutherford County government and the state of Tennessee, where the state of Tennessee will reimburse for services such as payroll, and it refers to the salary table lift that was granted in June. And so the contract has been amended by the state and then put forth to be approved by Rutherford County government, so that the state can reimburse the county for those raised salaries, those lifted salaries. It's actually the $203,000. The total above that, the $203,800, would be the contract amount that is increased by the amendment.
So, Director, I understand it just that after a pay study, they just realized we need to increase pay, and this is the difference being added to our budget to recognize that, and then we'll be reimbursed by the state, and therefore it's coming in as a grant amendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well put.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? And do we have discussion? Mr. Phillips?
Just one quick question. I understand we've already adopted the budget back in June, effective July 1st. And this is just amending that agreement, adding the additional funds for salaries. Will next year's grant reflect this increase as well?
Yes, my understanding is that would be an ongoing, those salaries have been lifted so that next year's budget will reflect that raised amount.
Okay, so we're not just approving it for this year, but that grant will also go forward.
Correct, yes, sir.
One other comment before we vote, Michael?
Let me add, we anticipate that being the same, but obviously any type of contract between us and the state is obviously subject to state appropriations to the state legislature. So I do agree we anticipate getting this. However, I do want that asterisk noted that, obviously we don't control the state legislature. So if they were to change something, this could change. It is not set in stone contractually forever with the state. It's subject to their appropriations.
Let me just add to that, Michael. It might add to it. it might not carry forward, but we also don't have to approve it next year. If it didn't forward, we don't have to approve it.
Any other discussion? Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Chairman Dodd?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask the director a question.
Please do.
Yeah. I should know the answer to this, but you said that 32% of the budget is from fees.
From revenue generated by the health department.
Okay, could you just give a few examples of what those fees might be?
Those could be, fees charged for primary care services, for health care services, or could also be the share that the county gets of vital records. We do birth certificates, death certificates there.
Okay, so is that something that if someone had insurance, we would bill their insurance?
Yes, we
Okay.
do accept insurance there.
That would be part of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Gooch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is community care. And we had placed a couple of bullets in that regard. The minutes were presented to us by email. Did they make the SharePoint? Yeah, they're on SharePoint. So they're on SharePoint. And the minutes were, they're there if you have any questions or thoughts. The one thing I noticed is that there's a tremendous fund balance at community care, some $4.8 million. Community care is taking care of some maintenance and items like that were in their minutes. And their census remains pretty steady. So please look at those minutes. And one item in the minutes you'll see is our bullet point B on our agenda tonight is the response to Commissioner Anthony Johnson's questions. The minutes of community care will reflect that tomorrow night at property management, where those questions arose, we will get a response to those questions tomorrow. One of the attorneys for community care, I believe, is presenting an answer, and he will also be presenting a 20-page response from the administrator from community care. And those 20 pages are also available to you guys on SharePoint. And there's packets printed as well that we'll see tomorrow. So hard copies tomorrow, but please take advantage of the SharePoint tonight. I believe that any other additions to that? Oh, and the mayor is the chair of that board, and so he's more abreast of it than any of us. If anybody has any questions, otherwise I'm going to move on. And be sure and get with me and Rachel as the weeks ensue to our next meeting. If you have a question on any of these topics, let us know. We'll drop a bullet in for you or try to get answers before the meeting. All right, I'm going to move on to Director Smith on special school projects.
So I gave a handout to each one of you. I will have this uploaded on SharePoint tomorrow, but we were trying to clean up some of these projects numbers-wise, and I couldn't get it on SharePoint in time, so I brought you a handout, but we'll get that uploaded tomorrow, so it's there for the record. But I want to point out a couple things. It's a little smaller than before. Hopefully it's a little easier to read. But I'll just point out a couple things. We've added a column for a funding amount. It's going to be the first column right there after the project description. So that'll tell you how much is funded for each project. And if you'll flip to the very back page, I want to point out, we had some discussion about this last time. You'll notice that there's some high schools right there. For example, the Oakland High School addition is going to be the last project on the last page. You notice the funding amount is $12,500, and you'll notice the budget is $1.2 million. And you'll notice a negative, it's in right there in red, but it says funding approved but not obtained. And so that's kind of what I was explaining last time. That's where this body or the commission has approved the 1.2 million for the design phase, but has only allocated or obtained funding of 12,500. So that's why you see that negative there. And then at the very bottom, you'll see a negative $3.3 million. That's the sum of all those projects that have been approved that we have not obtained funding yet for. So whatever we do in the future, as far as borrowing for schools, we will have to borrow for that amount, or at least up to that amount, depending on how much we've spent. The other column that has been changed is going to be that column right there on the second to the far right. It's going to be labeled B minus C right there, not obligated, over or under budget. And as you flip through those projects, you'll notice several of these projects are under budget, and that's a good thing, because we never want to fall short when we're going to the bond market to borrow money. And so as these projects get finished, those monies can now be allocated to other projects. So you'll notice a lot of times in that funding column, we'll have something that says transfers, and that's where at the end of a project, we'll have X amount of dollars left over. Well, those don't go to waste. We'll transfer it, to another project. I've covered a lot right there. Is there any questions, or does that all make sense?
There'll be a transfer example, please.
So let me find a good one to show you.
I see Plainview, page 1. Plainview has some.
Plainview, okay. So if we look at Plainview Elementary, we did a bond issue in 2020 for that school, for Plainview Elementary. We then, I was not here at that time, but then I guess we thought we needed more money, so we transferred 1.2 million from another project, and then when we realized we had enough money, we have transferred 1.7 out of that project. And you can see that project still is currently under budget by $488,000. Now, let me point out, that's what's under budget based on the contracts and stuff that we have. We could be even further under budget when they finish. If you're familiar with an AIA contract with a GC, there's stuff in there called contingencies and general conditions. That's not always spent to the fullest extent depending on the project. So you could come in better, but as of right now, that's where we're under budget is for that Plainview Elementary. Does that make sense on the transfers over there in the funding column?
Yes.
Okay. I hope we're still going to continue to try to clean this report up. I hope this is making it a little easier to read and to follow. We hope to make it more detailed in the future. But as I was trying to get rid of those big long spreadsheets and that big long packet and really try to break it down as here's how much we have for each project, here's how much we've spent, and here's how much we're either over or under.
Question. Can you go back and explain, what do you mean by funding approved but not obtained?
Okay.
And also, where was it approved?
So I'll use, really all of those high schools, I'll use as an example, but we can pick anyone. I'll just pick Oakland because it's the last one right there. So this commission prior, I was not here at that time. I do believe it was prior fiscal year when that was approved. I'm kind of looking over at Chairman Phillips. They approved the design process, and that's very normal. We'll use cash flow from other projects to approve the design process without going to the bond market, because part of that design process is drawing up and putting it out to bid. So we wouldn't want to go borrow, let's say, $100 million, and that bid comes in at 110 and then have to go back to the borrowing market. Or the vice versa, we don't want to go borrow $100 million and it comes in at 80, and we've borrowed too much and we're paying interest on money that we did not need. So generally, the commission will approve funding for the design of a project that they know they need or want to approve in the future. So in this case, the schools have some projects currently under design. I do believe they presented something either last month or the month before last that they plan to open some bids, I think in February. I'm looking at Dr. Sullivan back there. So once they bring those bids back to their school board, they'll open those. Their school board will make a decision if they want to move forward. If they do, they will then send that up here to this committee, and this committee will take that under consideration. It will then move to budget and subsequently to the full commission for that funding to be obtained. However, even if we decide not to move forward with these projects, this commission is still obligated to pay those design fees. And so even if we decided not to do the Oakland High addition, for example, we would still have to pay that architect fee because he drew the drawings and did that work. And so that's why I show that down there, that 3.3 million is a funding approved but not obtained. So y'all have approved those expenditures, we just haven't physically gotten cash yet. We will have to go borrow or find money for that. Does that answer your question?
It does somewhat. I guess my concern is in previous minutes that I've reviewed for this body and budget, I don't see where those monies were actually approved. I see where designs maybe, but not necessarily total budgets have been
I can go
approved
back
or
and-
come through budget, if that's
I
makes
can go
any
back
sense.
and get those minutes, but I do believe they came all the way through commission is my understanding.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
I can try to find that and bring that to you next month. I do know that they obligated, not obligated, that's the wrong term. I do know they talked about a very large round number to borrow in the spring, but I remember a specific vote, reading of a specific vote where they did not approve that borrowing, that they approved the board to go back into the design phase and bring that number back to this body. But these were approved because as part of that approval process, we moved some small amounts that we had left over. But I'll have to go back and find the minutes. Again, that was before my time, but I can go find those.
Gotcha. So basically, we're just obligated for the design, and that's it.
Yes, and let me say, that is very normal, like I said, because you don't want to go borrow without knowing what you want to
Gotcha.
build, so.
Thank you.
Trey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, if we can go to the Plainview Elementary example there, project, with the, I guess, line B, that figure there, 35 and some million, that's the, well, you got the final amount at 35,377, then it's amended. So is amended the final?
So the first column's funding, that's how much we borrowed for it.
Okay, gotcha.
And then there's the original budget, and that changed at some point in time, the budget.
Right.
Now, the number under that, we actually borrowed $9,000 more than the budget. Now, we didn't do that on purpose. That's kind of like when you go to close on a house, sometimes you may be off a few $100 based on the time when we're borrowing, $80 million, when we time the market, we don't know what the premium's going to be. So that's why there's an extra $9,000 there. But at some point in time throughout the project, the budget got amended to that.
Okay, so then you've got the amended budget minus the contract to date, and that's almost 488,000, and then the cash balance is just over $500,000.
So the cash balance is really for my office to reconcile cash. That's really just cash we haven't spent yet. So that may be an outstanding PO, an outstanding contract, but the cash is really for me to reconcile how much cash flow we have sitting in that fund 189.
Okay, so the cash balance could be obligated.
Yes, and some of that is. So 488 is what's not obligated. So the
Okay.
difference in those is obligated to one of those categories. We may not have received a bill. It's very likely there's a punch list remaining for Plainview Elementary. I see Dr. Sullivan shaking his head. I would assume that's probably what that's for. But if you'll notice, let me draw your attention up there to Roy Waldron at the very top. You'll see a not obligated of 90,000, and you'll see a cash balance of 90,250. They both equal. That project is done, from my understanding. So that, when it's done, those two should equal.
Okay, so that's kind of where I'm going with. Looking at the plain view, is there a way to look at this or to know what % of the project is complete?
Yes, I mean, I can do a mathematical and give you a percentage of project complete. I can easily give you that, but as far as...
I get the reason I'm asking is not that you need to do that right now, but if we're looking at this and we're kind of estimating where are we on this, are we going to have enough, we're going to run out, it might be some good information if we knew that, okay, we've got $500,000, for example, not obligated, but we've got 98% complete, and we're pretty sure we're going to be okay, but if it's 80% complete, then
Well, the good news is you'll see that contracts to date column, column C. When we sign those contracts with the GC, so whether that be R.G. Anderson or Biskin or whoever, we're booking 100% of the contract in that dollar amount. So when we go out to bid, we do a guaranteed maximum price contract with these contractors who build the school. So we're booking 100% of that contract.
okay, so the contract to date,
That's all the contracts we've signed for that school or POs we've issued for that school, yes.
okay, and is that to assume that there could or could not be more contracts coming up?
I don't want to say all the time because there's always a chance, but generally, there's not. Generally, we have almost all of those booked, especially at this stage of the project. I mean, there's kids already in the building.
Right.
So it's very reasonable to think that 488 is very close to what you're going to have left over.
So if we got contracts to date and it's right at budget or under, then we know we're going to be okay,
Yep.
pretty much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ms. Oliver, I did find the minutes from the Rutherford County Board of Commissioners, Monday, June 27th, 2022. The motion was Education Committee Chair Rhonda Allen moved, seconded by Commissioner Wayne Blair, to fund the expansion of Oakland, Riverdale, and Smyrna High. The estimated cost based on revised numbers by Trey Lee is $136,017,000. No work will be authorized until after contractor bids are submitted and funded by another vote of the full commission, and the resolution passed by roll call vote. It appears to be unanimous. So that was in. So yes, so the 100. If it got to the Board of Commissioners, it was either passed through budget or may have come up on the floor of the commission, but I think it went through budget to get to the full commission floor. There's some budget minutes from June the 22nd where it appears Rhonda Allen Chairman Allen made the motion at budget. It did not receive a second. Education Committee Chair Allen made the same motion on the 27th, and it passed. And so the $136 million is not funded.
So to me, my understanding, the way I read that motion that was brought up on the commission floor, was that we approved the design. However, the commission has yet to grant authority to actually borrow that 136. That will have to come back. So we only approved the design. That's why you only see the budget. If you're looking at Oakland High School or any of the high schools there, Riverdale, Smyrna, Blackman, Laverne, and Oakland, you're only going to see a dollar amount in the architect line item. Now, that's an estimate of $1.2 million for designing and architect fees. That is probably going to be a little high for just the planning phase, because the architects will have fees throughout the phase, which we would not be obligated to pay all of those fees, just the design phase portion. So they would, like I said, they will open those bids, I think, in February-ish timeframe, and that will have to come all the way back through this committee, then budget, and then the full commission.
Yes, Mayor.
So a little clarification here as well. Part of the rationale for this was the previous commission was coming to the end of their tenure, and Ms. Allen, Commissioner Allen, wanted to give that final funding authority to the next county commission because they were going to have the authority to send a bond to out for borrowing in the spring of 2023. And so she felt, and rightfully so, that it would be the next county commission that had final approval on funding. Moreover, it was expected that the $136 million may not be an accurate number to bond. And so this same county commission felt like the next county commission should have the authority to make that final decision. So that is what transpired, and some of the logic behind that, if that helps.
And if these funds don't go through, the design expenses to date will be paid by fund balance or a transfer. And so if you look, so Riverdale High Addition, Smyrna High, Laverne High, Blackman High, and Oakland High are all listed as the last 5 items. 2 of which have no funding approved, have funding approved but not obtained. 3 do not have that note. Explain that, please.
So Riverdale High and Smyrna, we did do some, at that time, there was some money left over from some other projects, and that's where, if you'll notice, right there in the funding column for Riverdale and Smyrna, right there, there's $1.1 million that's been transferred. If you look over, it says project transfer April 2022. So we were able to move money from a project left over in April, whatever project that might have been, could have been a combination of several that was leftover money, and that's how we went ahead and were able to fund those projects.
So those were funded from other schools for funds unused at other schools.
Correct. It's just like the Roy Waldron money, there's $90,251 left. The school board could come over here and ask to reallocate that money to fund something. Now, I'm going to highly recommend that money's already been split with the schools, so I would highly recommend that money go to an elementary project. So we do track those transfers where it gets a little complicated. We try to keep high school with high school, elementary with elementary, middle with middle, just because of the splits. Now, you can use elementary money to go to a high school project. The problem is you would be wasting some money you've already split. Now, on the flip side, you can use some high school money left over, but then we would have to share some of that money with the city school system. So we share when we get the bond money. We just send it directly out, and that's when we share. And so we track that through its life. That's why we do it by project here.
Dr. Sullivan, I will have a question on the status of the 3 schools in the addition motion that Hope and I just discussed. So thank you. That's a lot to take in, all the way down to the 10% split. So thank you, Michael, for revising this and giving us some summary. Are there any more questions? And please note that this will be on every agenda. Every month we're going to have this, and I think we'll get more familiar with it. And in the meantime, if you have any questions that come up prior to the next meeting, please bring them forward. And if nothing else, we'll have them printed on the list so all the other committee members can see it. Yes, sir. Mr. Rick.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Smith, this is a much improved report. I just wanted to say thank you for doing that. The numbers are much easier to follow. I've already been doing a lot of math over here, and it looks a lot better. Thank you for your work on that.
Thank you. Do we need a motion of approval of his report? I'll entertain a motion to approve the special projects report. So moved. Second. Is there a second? Mr. McMurray. All those in approval, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Dr. Sullivan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. You have several things for you. First, if you will, we'll do our budget amendments because I believe that's the way it's presented to you on your agenda. So that is actually going to be the 3rd page. I gave each of you a handout. Commissioner McMurray, did I give you one as well? Yeah, perfect. But I believe you have these as well. So we're going to look at our board agenda items November 3rd, 2022 financial matters. And so this is your first amendment before you. Fund 177, Capital Projects Budget Rebudgeting Prior Year Encumbrances tab. So this amendment budgets $188,963 from $34,685 committed for Capital Projects Fund balance to Educational Capital Projects $99,100, $399 other contracted services to cover amended change orders and future expenditure items regarding Smyrna High football turf project. The remaining balance after project's complete will stay in Fund 177 and spent accordingly to donor guidance. The request is presented with amendment. It also budgets $1.6 million from $34,685 committed for capital projects fund balance to education capital projects $99,100,732. Building purchases to procure additional portable classroom space. In addition, the attached 177 budget amendment spreadsheet shows amounts to be amended internally. So we had a lot of discussion on this one, and we moved the portables to an additional amendment that you're going to see here in just a minute. So for this motion, it is just to amend $188,963 from committed for capital projects fund balance to capital projects $99,100,399 other contracted services in regard to Smyrna High football turf project. And then you'll see that next one come back on the very next one.
Move to approve this amendment as presented.
Do I hear a second? I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or clarity needed from Dr. Sullivan on the $188,000 donation that will be used per the donor's request?
You guys will see this quite a bit. This was a donation from Smyrna Ready Mix, and it's in 177. So anytime we need to spend money out of this, it will come back to you for the school to use.
Okay, I do have a question.
It was Carl.
Now, this is money that was donated to Smyrna,
Correct.
and this amount is left over,
Correct.
and now you want to use it for something else?
For Smyrna. So this is at Smyrna's direction.
You're going to
Yes.
use something,
Yes,
use this for Smyrna?
This money is allocated to Smyrna High School. Great question. This is not typical. For some reason, this was put into 177. That probably wouldn't have been our current financial director or my thought on where to put the money from a donation, but that is where it was put regardless. And so instead of going through the audit process of trying to explain why did you get a donation and move the donation, it was determined to go ahead and leave it here. And anytime the school needs to access their funds, they unfortunately have to go through several different loopholes that traditionally schools don't have to when they get a big donation. This just moves what was left to allow them to start purchasing some of those things. I know the first one's soccer goals. They needed money for soccer goals, and they're going through this process to purchase soccer goals.
So it's donated to Smyrna,
Yep,
used by
for
Smyrna.
Yep.
Thank you. Great.
Dr. Sullivan, this will continue until this money is gone.
It will.
So
Yes,
we could
sir.
have this every month.
Very well could.
And future donations will be put in a more clarifying location.
Where they have been before, yes, sir.
I have a motion and a second. If there's no more discussion, we'll call the
Just
roll.
a quick question. So in the motion, this is all donated, none of this is tax dollars?
Correct. It was all donated.
Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Boyd,
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray,
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch,
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver,
Aye.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Chairman Dodd.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, the second one is the second part of that. Our board tabled it and had a different discussion on our last November 22nd, 2022 board meeting. So Financial Matters Fund 177, Capital Projects Budget Amendment. This amendment budgets $1.6 million from $34,685 committed for Capital Projects Fund balance to Education Capital Projects $99,100,732 building purchases to procure additional portables for classroom space. In addition, the attached 177 budget amendment spreadsheet show amounts to be amended internally between projects. Recommended motion to amend $1.6 million from $34,685 committed for capital projects fund balance to educational capital projects $99,100,732 building purchases to procure additional portables for classroom space, and this is for 10 portables. Sorry, for 10 portables, that'll be what it purchases.
Dr. Sullivan, just for those that might be watching this meeting, could you briefly just tell us your plan on where you're putting those?
Yeah.
That was going to be my question.
Yep, for those portables, we are looking at Stewart's Creek Elementary. You are looking at least 5 there. You are looking at Riverdale High School, Stewart's Creek High School, and possibly Blackman Elementary School. They are double, absolutely, they're double. Yes, it gives us really 20 classrooms. We don't love portables, but it's Stewart's Creek Elementary, at least 5. Stewart's Creek High School, Blackman Elementary, and then Riverdale High School is one that we are watching very closely. Our board rezoned Rockville because they were so overcrowded last year. Riverdale High School jumped in enrollment because of that rezone, but a lot of students stayed at Rockville. They had a grandfather option. If they were a junior or senior, they could stay. And so we have a larger enrolling class at Riverdale the next couple years. It's not quite there yet.
Mayor Carr.
Dr. Sullivan, does this include installation in FF&E?
It will, yes, sir.
Okay,
The only thing it does not include that our board will come back in our GP budget. We don't usually budget awnings for our portables, and our kids continually just run out into the rain or whatever the weather happens to be, so our board has had interest in building awnings at our...
But it is installation in FF&E, correct? Thank you, sir.
Great question. Thank you, Mayor.
Move to approve the budget amendment as presented.
Do we have a second? Any further discussion? Trey?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification, so this money, the 1.6 million is coming from,
177.
it's already committed?
Yes.
And what was that committed to? It was a balance, correct?
Yes, and it's out of our balance, and you can see on the move over on the very last page, you'll kind of see where we're moving those from, but most of it's from fund balance.
Okay, and this is just going back to the educational capital projects
To be able to purchase the portables, yes.
line item, then it would be spent on the
Correct.
portables.
Yeah, absolutely.
If there are no further questions.
Just another,
Yeah,
I
please
guess,
do.
question for clarification. Okay, you said Riverdale High School, correct?
Correct.
And then Riverdale High School is one of the high schools we're expanding as well, doing
Correct.
annexation, right?
Yes.
When would these portables be available?
If we were to get approval from this body, then budget, and then through full county commission, we would put them out to bid and hopefully be able to purchase them in January or February so that they would be ready by the school year, by
Next
August.
school year?
Yes.
Which would be sooner than any building.
It is absolutely sooner, and that's the
Gotcha.
unfortunate part. But when we move buildings, let's just take our Rockville additions that we're working on right now. Our Rockville Middle Edition was not completely ready for us to get in it until October. And so we had portables sitting there that Riverdale was actually getting one. So they had to use different areas in their building that's already overcrowded to try to fit. This gets us so that we can hopefully have portables installed before the school year starts. Yes, and then hopefully we'll be able to, once the addition is complete at Riverdale, if funded, then we would be able to use these to replace some of our portables that are not in great shape, that we've replaced roofs on 3 and 4 times.
I've got one more question for clarification.
And if I could build on Ms. Oliver's questions and Mr. Wilson's question, when we were present at this particular vote, so I was able to listen in addition to moving, the one at Riverdale will replace some that are beyond repair that can't be moved. Now, so they had a really robust discussion about a handful of these, 4 or 5 of these perhaps, have secondary locations to go to when we do get some more classrooms. So I thought it was a pretty sound plan. Mr. Gooch.
So you said there's 10 portables at 1.6 million. So a portable is 160,000.
About 125,000 to purchase it, and then we build the other 30 electrical, hooking up to our
Gotta get
HVAC, everything else, to our emergency systems, intercom.
The reason I asked, when I first got to the commission, a double wide was $40,000.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. And
And,
that's what we're hoping that they're going to be.
And the other FF&E too, Trey, the actual furniture and equipment in addition to. So we've had a motion, a second, and discussion. Madam Chairman, Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Mr. Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Chairman Dodd?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, next thing on your agenda is just a Board of Education update. So as I mentioned, we had 2 meetings in November. A lot of those meetings were just around policy, enrollment, zoning, continuing our discussion around building so that we're looking at what we need to look at. The Tennessee Department of Education report card was released on the 22nd, so that is available for anyone to look at. We are an advancing district, which is the second to the highest. And so if you look at the districts that perform at the top level, which is exemplary, which is our goal. Most of those don't necessarily have the diversity that we do in Rutherford County. The way the state accountability system is set up, that is our goal, of course, but the counties you will see there lack the diversity that we do. So we're thrilled with where we are and expect to continue to improve of where we are. The other portion to look at is staffing. So staffing is still a huge concern for us. Our classrooms, for the most part, are covered through various avenues. As we continue to grow, and you'll see our enrollment's growing, I'm more and more concerned having and we talk about this every time, that's still a concern. Our janitorial custodial is the biggest concern that I have immediately. So as of the 22nd, when we last met, we had 55 of our 234 custodial positions that were open or currently unfilled. And so that's a huge gap that we are missing, and we are filling that right now through overtime and just having everyone step in the way they can, but that is not a long-term solution. We're expecting a salary study to come back. We've got multiple options we're discussing, but I just wanted to put that out there. That is a fire that is burning that we have to put out sooner rather than later. Attendance-wise, there's always a lot of discussion around, just so as county commissioners, if you hear this, there are school districts that close because of the flu or because of illness. We are so large that is very rare outside of the COVID area for something that necessarily impacts us. The biggest outside of the Tuesday before Thanksgiving attendance that we saw was a Friday in November. I believe it was the 10th. 11th. It was actually Veterans Day, or whatever that Friday was right there. We saw about 10% of our students out, which seems alarming, but when you look at a district with over 50,000 kids, we had about 4,800 out, which meant over 45,000 students were in attendance. And so it is going to have to be into the low 80s for us to even look at considering that. And even at that point, you're still looking at 40,000 students that would be available for attendance. So when you hear that conversation, is the county school system going to close because of illness? It's going to have to be drastic because of our size. Celebration-wise, of course, we had Thurman Francis that received their official Blue Ribbon School in Washington, D.C., so we are very proud of them. There were only 6 schools in the state of Tennessee that received that recognition, and then we have our School Choice Fair, and School Choice opens December 1st. Actually, my kids are at one right now, a School Choice event that the school's hosting informational meetings, and so that is a way we have over 40% of our schools have some type of choice available, whether it's through programming or through open seats. That is a misnomer that we don't have school choice in Rutherford County. We absolutely do, and we've just rebranded that. Instead of saying open the seats with zoning, it's now school choice. So rebranded that portion of it. And that's all I have for the Board of Education update before I get into enrollment. Anybody has any questions?
Any questions? Phillips.
You mentioned a shortage of janitorial services help. We talked in the past about outside contract services. Any
Yes.
movement there at all?
So that is a discussion we're having. What we worry about is if we were to go just outside right off the bat and deal with everyone, we feel like we'd lose the employees that we currently have. And if we went to more of a centralized approach, right now people are choosing to go to their schools and work at their schools because they want to work at that school. And so that is a concern. I do know that we have some principals who are interested because they just are to the point of, it doesn't matter, I can't fill it. And it is all over the board from every socioeconomic status of our school for introduced lunch. We have one of our most award-winning schools that struggles to fill custodians, and then a high poverty school that doesn't. And so it truly, there's not necessarily a trend that we're seeing. It just happens to be the school and where they're struggling to fill those positions. It is something we're going to look at. We use 2 state contracts to be able to try to find outside agencies to be able to help. We only had 4 applicants. One of them was the only one that agreed to an interview and they didn't show up. So we're using state contracts. We haven't been successful. I've asked our maintenance director to go out and try to talk to some of our companies here to see if on a short-term basis if we could bid out and look at contracting with some of them. I know they can't do large scale, but that may be something that we have to look at within our budgetary line right now.
Dr. Sullivan, I've been reading so much I can't forget where I see things now. You were mentioning just getting information out about our school choice programs. I read through some materials you've created. It was fabulous. I cannot remember where I saw it, where I read it, but I read through each school, what they offer. It was outstanding. Can you tell everybody where that was? That on the website?
It is, yeah.
I was somewhere one day going, what is this? And it was
Yes.
awesome, and I wanted to tell you
Yeah.
that. But everybody needs to see that, because for anyone asking about our choice seats that we have inside, it's very comprehensive,
It is.
actually. It was well done.
It is. Thank you. So Dr. Chastain and Dr. Caitlin Bullard. So Dr. Bullard was a principal. She was with us, but now she is our school choice coordinator. We stole her back from the city right at the very beginning of the summer. And that is kind of her passion area, is to make sure that students have choice. And so she has done an amazing job, one, in just summarizing, but two, in also making sure that we're branding it appropriately. We've had a lot of these school choice options. We just haven't branded them as school choice. It's just been, we have open seats. If you're interested, come apply through zone exemption. And a lot of it is with marketing and branding, and that is not what a public school system is used to doing, but that is what public school systems have to do now. And so thank you for that. I will share those comments. They've done an amazing job.
Yeah, I think it was a PDF.
It is.
Just
Yeah, it's on
something
our
you can
website.
forward
Yep.
on to constituents or any folks that ever ask you about it. It was really well done. You can forward that in an email.
Just on
It was on their
rcschools.net.
website.
Yeah, it is it's the very first thing. It says school choice. And then it has the school choice fair, which is December 8th. We're hosting that at Smyrna Middle School. I believe it's Smyrna Middle School.
Yeah, it was very
That's right,
impressive.
yes.
Please pass that on. It
Yes,
was-
I will. Yep, it's very good work. And it includes everything from our open seats at the elementary school level to Holloway, to our magnet programs, to our virtual school. It truly encompasses everything. And we have plans to expand it. We just are taking baby steps, so.
Thanks, Phil, for passing that word.
Yep.
If without objection, we'll move on to the next portion of the presentation.
Question, I do have a question. As it relates to school choice, then transportation, how does that work?
Yeah, so transportation for our open seats, that is part of it. Parents have to provide their own transportation. Yep. That is something that is just, we're not able to do as a district. It would be cost prohibitive.
Without objection, we'll move on to the enrollment.
So I mentioned in October, you will get a different report every month that goes back and forth between the two. In October, you got a breakdown that's very similar to this, but instead of showing by grade level, it showed you by ethnicity or subgroup, students with disability, English language learners. This is just truly taking the schools and showing you what their enrollment is. And I'll just kind of go over the columns so you can see. If you see integrated pre-K, those classrooms are supposed to stay at 12 to 15 students. That is integrated with special education preschool students and general education preschool students. That is funded federally and some at the local level as well. Voluntary pre-K is one that you will see probably at the next meeting that we have as we accept different grants. This is a state grant for voluntary pre-K, and we have students across the district, and 20 is their max, and you will see that it is just about full, if not full, everywhere. Kindergarten Readiness is a local program that for students who are right on that cutoff that we have at a couple of schools, this is something that unfortunately is phasing out. It was put in place by Mr. Odom probably a decade or so ago that had a great sustainability for our students who were at that kindergarten age but weren't quite necessarily ready for kindergarten. Where it hurts us is that we are not funded for those, and since we are growing so quickly, we limit those classrooms to 15 to 20 students. And if you have a kindergarten teacher who has 15 students, then funding-wise, we're getting funded 1 to 20. As big as our schools are, some other teachers having to take those other 5 kids. And so as our schools continue to grow, that model isn't necessarily financially stable or realistic for us to follow. The rest of them are just across your grade levels. You will see there's one column that is not included in here, and we talked about these last time. These are our super seniors, our students who are not quite, they've graduated or they may be in special education past the age of 18 and they can stay until they finish their 21. So they are not in this. And you will see our total. Then the next one's total plus pre-K. So Barfield's a good example. They have 12 pre-K students to make 961. And then I have the difference, a couple big differences that you will notice. You will notice that the 239 from Blackman, I believe that's high school, is a big jump. So, in Christiana Middle, that is a wrong number, so I need to fix that one. That is my fault and an error on calculation when I was deleting columns because you guys didn't care about the teacher ratio of every classroom in every school because this is my big, huge master spreadsheet. But you'll see our total on this is $50,686. And then the last thing it was requested at our last Health and Ed meeting was to go over kind of how we got to this point with ranking our high schools for addition purposes. And our board requested all 5 back last spring. The county commission at that point asked them to rank them and prioritize them. And so it was asked to be brought forth. There necessarily was discussion over a rubric. There wasn't necessarily a rubric. It was truly a presentation like, we're giving to you, here's our enrollment, here's our zones, here's our schools, and then where does every person rank them? And so this is just a ranking. I believe in transparency, just wanted you to kind of see where they were. And of course, my job as well is to protect our board members as well. And so when you're looking at this portion of it, you also have to realize that it is a public record. And so people are not just only charged with, yes, what's best for our school system, but also representing their area as well. So I have to be aware of the public pressure of that as well.
This was the previous board.
Previous board, correct.
And I know that this board, these ladies and gentlemen had been absorbing the conditions of their schools for some years. They had toured every school. They had agonized over who's getting neglected, who's getting attention. They had to contend with our lack of funding or funding, whichever the case may be. We've struggled to spend the hundreds of millions of dollars necessary to keep schools up to par. It's a tough balancing act for us. So as I look at this, despite the fact that there's not an apparent rubric, I do know that the school board were very intentional and very dedicated to putting their feet on the ground, and I think making a determination based on what they were observing in the field, as it were.
And I would add that we started this discussion December of 21, had a special call meeting in January, and then we still didn't even, there was more discussion delayed, and then I don't believe actually we ended up voting on it until March. And so multiple months, and at the same time our board was challenged with Rockville High School. That was the burning fire at that time. Right now it's kind of some of our elementary schools, but Rockville High School was sitting over 2,500 kids with 10 portables on a 2-year-old school. And so that was also our reality at that point.
So I just want to get clarification. So this pretty much is just basically what they thought their assessment of, because I've toured almost every one of these high schools, and I kind of disagree with this, to be honest.
And again, what I would bring up, and it's just the facts, is the board asked for all 5, and then we're asked with a hard task of basically picking your favorites, and this is how it came out based on the votes at that time of what needed to be funded, with the hope that all 5 would be funded within the first 2 years. That was the hope, that you'd have 2 1 year, 3, and then the next 3 years after. And there's been quite a lot of discussion as well about, and I'll just bring up Laverne High School, whether or not Laverne High School truly is a school that needs an addition, or if it's a school that needs more of a renovation to bring it up to par with the rest of the schools. And so that's been a discussion that as we move forward with our 5-year building plan, it's probably going to come up as well, because we want our schools to be equitable in what they look like, and that's not necessarily the case of anybody's fault right now.
I would agree they need both. But absolutely, even if they had some new ceiling tiles and lights.
Ceiling tiles, lights, floor,
so dark.
paint. Yep.
And then I was very embarrassed by the swim area to understand that we host swim meets, and to have people come from all around to see that, I was embarrassed. So definitely Laverne High School needs to be taken care of.
Dr. Sullivan, one of the things I think the chairman mentioned earlier is we're going to need to keep updates. I know we're concerned about the timelines on the bids coming back to get to the bond market. And I know we've got 1, 2, and 3 coming back. Yes. With Riverdale, Smyrna, and Oakland. So I know we're all crossing fingers trying to get there. Can you give us an update on that?
Great. So we had, being in the city limits, we had our public hearings for Murfreesboro City zoning November 14th and 15th for Oakland Riverdale. Smyrna High Schools is on Thursday of this week as well. And so they're in the middle of their planning portion. We're still going through with our entire bid process to release in January, so that hopes we can have those in February so they'll be ready end of February, beginning of March. And that's kind of the timeline, the very latest timeline that we can work on, as we're trying to push it through as quickly as possible. The other part of that is I do imagine Mr. Smith was talking about the funding and the unobligated funding in some of our special projects. We're in discussion and we're currently under contract, but we have the ability to get out of the contract with the Beatty property over in the Blackman area. And so that is something with the appraisals, as we continue to talk through that, we may be asking to move some of this funding around to be able to purchase some of that for a potential school in the future. So I don't know the direction the board will take, but that is something that may come to you in the next month or so.
So Director Smith, just to ask, have you looked at what you think a date is that we're all shooting for, just so we're all in it together, and we can put pressure on anyone that needs to try to get together what we need, and what's our deadlines?
As soon as possible.
Yep. And we are to the point where we're doing things the way they have been done and talking with our city municipalities. Legally, I'm not sure that we have to do that, but we're playing nice to make sure we meet all of their deadlines as well. And we're trying to be good partners and good community members, but if push comes to shove, I don't believe we have to. That's as politically correct as I can answer that.
Did you say all three of the 130, the Oakland, Riverdale, Smyrna, will all have bids in February? Are they coming in staggered, or will they come in
They
at
are
once?
staggered. They're on different dates.
And
Yep, they're on different
what do you
date openings.
anticipate the order of those bids coming in?
Smyrna, Riverdale, Oakland. I believe I'd have to check my notes, but they're all within those first couple weeks. I'll pull that up. Yep. And I can send that to you to share out if that works. Yep. We've had lots of fun discussions over the years. Even before I was in this role, we did charter schools, we did zoning. We've had lots of fun conversations.
Well, and just to mention, going full circle, everything we've talked about tonight, including right there, is all going to come together here in the early spring, because there was the vote, the initial, to do these 3 additions, and that did come from those meetings before where you were asked to take the 5 and rank them in order to get it to a more affordable place. Now the bids are coming back, and we're going to have to move swiftly, quickly, to get it through all of the committees and processes to figure out what we need to do to get to the bond market in time. So,
And not just get to the bond market, but to get kids in the seats. To Hope's point a moment ago, we're buying portables at $161,000 each for classrooms we're trying to fund. So I hope we don't delay this for Michael's sake and for those 3 schools' sakes.
And that's something I mentioned to our board about the Beatty property. We may go through and purchase the Beatty property, but we're still at least probably another year away before we would go to the bond market to do anything with that at that point because of the timeline for that.
and I believe the things in current discussion are Stewart's Creek Elementary, Blackman Elementary. You're still in discussions on what you're going to do, if we're going to design or not, and that was hinging a bit on the Beatty property.
Correct.
So this
Yes.
is stuff we're going to find out probably at your next special called meeting, which I believe is Thursday. Is that correct?
Yes, we have a special call meeting on Thursday to discuss the Beatty property and the appraisal and what they decided to do.
All right. Yeah, just so we can all stay attuned to what's going on with that, because, right, that will affect how you proceed with the 2 elementary schools and
Correct.
all that. Thank you.
59 acres and then 2 for the house and the site. So 61 total. Right over 61.
One last comment about the portables for those that are watching as well. Even upon getting new additions done, these new portables, we all visited many schools. I know we may discuss that later. Certainly, I believe many of them could be replaced. So, of course, as we get additions done, these can be ones we're purchasing in service for where we need for many years to come, and some that are questionable, discarded.
Correct, yes.
And I think that's important for people to know. This is part of maintenance as well, to replace some of those ones that are, clearly need to be put to pasture.
The portables that I was a student in this district are still very well being utilized today. Great memories, some of them great memories, some of them not so great memories.
So everything that we've heard since our last budget vote was informational purposes, so I don't believe we need
Correct.
any motions on what we've heard thus far. Any more questions for Dr. Sullivan? And we will do this again soon.
And I don't anticipate any December amendments.
Okay,
We have
okay,
December
then I'll go
13th,
to the
15th.
next. So the next item, well, thank you. That segues into the next item on our agenda is that confirm the December meeting. And Rachel and I just did a note. If that's becoming too compressed for your family's Christmas time or vacations, would consider, if there's not critical business, we could postpone or reschedule. So I just want to put that on the agenda for discussion tonight. That meeting is on the... And we did move that one up. Okay, I'm sorry. So we did clarify that. We moved it out of the middle of the holiday. Gotcha. But the school board does not anticipate any report at all, or just budget reports? Okay. So we moved it from the 27th to the 20th. December 20th at 6 p.m. is the new meeting date. And if we don't have business, we could cancel a meeting and pick up again in January. We've just been informed the school board's not going to have any financial matters for us. So consider that. We don't have to make a decision at this moment, but I would like to make a decision before we leave tonight. So contemplate that for a moment. If we don't have business, we'll have some significant community care items on tomorrow night's property management. I don't know that will necessarily affect us the following month here.
Chairman, would you like to get a head count? I'm good for December 20. Do we need to make sure we're all good and then decide if we want to cancel it, but first make sure we're good? Is that what we want to do?
Well, we did that when we moved the meeting. I think we had a consensus the 20th is good. I think our only objective with tonight was if we confirm going to have significant enough business to have a meeting. Any thoughts, Mayor Pro Tem?
Just an idea. Leave it scheduled for the 20th. You make a decision before the 20th whether to cancel it or not.
That's what we normally would do.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you then. Thank you. So that note may have been more for my need, but I will want a consensus from you guys. So if you have anything that's weighing on you that you want to be sure we don't neglect for another month, or if you're content, give me some feedback. Otherwise, I'll make a decision here the next week. I believe now, other business, and I had observed a lot of school visits, a lot of social media where impressively you guys have been visiting a lot of schools, so I thought it might be a good opportunity to just share, if you wish. It's no obligation, but if anybody wanted to share their observations from having toured schools and met principals and seen class changes and other interesting things. So please share. I know Vice Chair Wilson, I think you had some comments.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. We've discussed several of the things tonight already just because of discussing the high school additions, and it has been a full year since those have come in discussion. That's right. And taking that in consideration, I know myself, this committee is filled with new members, so I know how important it was for myself, and I'm sure the others will agree as well when they speak, is to make sure we've put eyes on the buildings and talked to the administrators and seen for ourselves, because we're going to have some very important voting coming up and funding decisions to get this done. So I know that was one of the reasons for getting to them so swiftly. And most of us hit most of these schools several in just really a 4 to 6 week period. And I know that was a big reason, was to make sure we were able to have those discussions soon. So rather than make any observations on issues I observed that are available at every Board of Education meeting that they discuss every time, I'd like to offer this remark on my observation. The administrators and the educators in this county are outstanding. And I think that's probably my biggest observation. We're going in as problem solvers. Let's see what's going on, how we can jump in and help. But when I left, I was inspired by how facing ever-growing challenges, these administrators have solution after solution after solution on how they've handled to take care of the issues. And the way that I've seen that they care about their staff, they care about the students at our county, I left inspired to just want to do all I can to serve and help. I know others will agree with that as well. So I think the one comment I want to make is thank you for that time, and we heard the remarks, and we listened, and we heard what you have to say, and we appreciate everything that you're doing for the county. You know, it's a pleasure to serve.
You're here. Well said. Well said. Thank you for those remarks. If anybody else that's been on tours that had any remarks or observations?
I would just like to say I agree with Commissioner Wilson as well. Not only the administrators and the teachers, but I've noticed that the SRO officers, they play a very critical role in our schools as well, and the respect that they get from what I've seen is very admirable of them. And so when I ran, I made a vow to visit every single school within Rutherford County, and so I'm on par. Several of us are. So, and it's been great. We've all got along and seeing behind the scenes, talking to everyone. So, thank you for allowing us to speak.
Absolutely. And thanks for your energy, Ms. Davidson.
I'm going to agree with both of them. I haven't made it to all of the schools. I'm a little behind with my schedule, but I'm absolutely going to agree that they are doing the very best that they can with what they have, and they're wonderful. To go down these halls, and they know these kids by name. What are you doing? What are you doing? You know, they have some wonderful programs that they didn't have when I was in school. It was just amazing at some of the things. I do want to get to all of the schools, but I do hopefully want to keep in mind that while we may not be able to fund building new schools for everyone right off the bat, or even adding additions, that we are taking care to add a little bit of paint, help the students and the administrators in these schools have a little more pride. Even if you can't get the space, some of the things, I felt like you didn't need $1 million to bring a little more pride in. For some of the restroom doors were kind of made out of plywood, and I absolutely anything at all we can do to help fundraise or get in the schools and help the kids and help the parents and the administrators. If there's, I know you have to be careful who you let in with students, but if there's anything at all that I can do, I absolutely want to help make these schools better for these students, the administrators. Even if it's getting somebody to donate some paint or donate some time, if that's allowed, I would absolutely love to be a part of that. Otherwise, I think they're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. That's great energy, and I know that energy will permeate all the way to the board and to the administration out there. So thank you for that. Ms. Oliver.
I too agree that the teachers are doing phenomenal things with what they do have, as well as the administrators. But I will, again, as I stated earlier, there are some things that I feel can be done. Just like Commissioner Davidson said, touring football fields and you got poles that split and lights not working and things, and those are safety issues, So those things, there are things that can be addressed until building additions can be done. There are things that can be done right now, and I really think we need to look at what the administrator needs are, because I know they do these reports and things of that nature, because not only do we want our students to feel proud of where they go. They go to other schools and other activities and see what's going on in other schools, and then to have to go back to their school. You know, you want them to be proud of where they go to school. You want teachers to be proud of where they're working. Granted, they are doing great things, but you want them to have pride. You don't want to have those staffing shortages because I prefer to work over here because it's aesthetically more pleasing, you know. So these are all of our students, you know, not just Rutherford County in Murfreesboro or Rutherford County in Smyrna. Laverne is Rutherford County also. And so we need to think about all of our students and all of our facilities and when we're making these decisions, and not just what might be the most popular or the quote-unquote favorite, just to use the words you used earlier.
Yeah, thank you. Great observation. And I'm going to take the liberty of asking Dr. Sullivan to consider, if not our next meeting, but in the upcoming meeting, to help all of us get educated on the maintenance program. None of you guys yet have seen the maintenance list that Trey Lee puts out, and they've got pages and rows of lines and an estimate by them, and they start prioritizing. And we've struggled with those very observations you've made. How can we influence which items go on top? And ultimately, it's the board's decision to prioritize and ours to fund. But I think with the collaboration we've started thus far, if we can, Dr. Sullivan, let's have a presentation to help Ms. Oliver and the rest of us understand your priorities. And I'm sure that the board would entertain, if you had a couple of items that you've observed, please whether they come through this meeting, let's get a list and pass it on, or if that might be the best way, please give me and Rachel, if you had a few items that were very specific to you and your school, pass them on to us, and we'll share those with the administration. I think it's a great idea. Thank you for that input, guys. That brings me to the final item of entertaining a motion for adjournment. Meeting adjourned.